When I was 16, you know, I turned 16 and I left my mother's house. And so we sat down and agreed together because I wasn't going to obey the rules. It was best for me to leave, okay? And that was a mutual agreement between my mom and I. And she was a very strict person. And I was very afraid of her for, you know, many, many years. And then when I turned 16, I just went nuts and took what felt like taking my power back. And so, you know, we mutually agreed I wasn't going to obey the rules, so I needed to leave. And so took to the streets and growing up in the treacherous ghettos of Chicago, and lived on the streets for a couple of years, really, before I learned how to take care of myself. You know, lived in gambling houses and would sleep on the L train from one end of the line to the other, you know, sleeping on the gambling tables. And when I was 16, I was a doorman at the Whole House on 47th Street in Chicago, you know. And so I grew up around all of this treachery, and from age 16 to 22 became a part of that treachery. You know, but God was kind enough to take care of me through all of that. I think finally when I turned the latter part of my 18th year or 19th year, I finally learned how to take care of myself, and I maintained my own apartment and paid my rent. I was still a dishonest student in the University of Life's other side of the fence, but I was, I was, you know, being responsible, you know, in that shadowy kind of way. And then when I turned 21, I met a woman and I fell in love with her, which I really didn't want to feel that way about anybody. I was a very hateful individual, and I had a lot of hatred toward women, actually, and hatred toward my mother. I mean, I had a lot to really move through. But I fell in love with this woman, and it was the way that the universe was working with me to slow me down. See, I had to come from where I was at to universal love, and I couldn't come straight from the treachery that I was in to universal love. So I had to come by way of human love. So I fell in love with this woman, and the relationship only lasted for 9 months, a period of gestation. And upon the culmination of that relationship, I stepped full on into my spiritual path. And I remember it was 1973, so it's been a while now. I've been walking my spiritual path for 45 years. And I remember it was 3 days before my 22nd birthday. And I would no longer do the things that I used to do to make money because my whole energy had changed. This spiritual awakening happened. And all of my friends were of that street life. So I was like completely alone because, you know, we didn't resonate, so I didn't hang out with them. And so I remember here I was, it was January 23rd, 1973. My rent was due. It was only $80. I had a little one room, you know, space. It was $80 a month. I didn't even have that. I had $30 to my name, but I had this astrological chart done. And the chart kept saying I would benefit from an investigation of metaphysics and the occult, which I knew nothing about. But I had remembered there was an occult bookstore on the north side of Chicago. So I said, well, I don't have my rent, but I got $30. I'm going down to that store and buy me some books. I went down there and I spent $25 on books, and I kept $5 for myself. And I came back home and I started reading about 3 in the afternoon and read from 3 in the afternoon till 5 o'clock the next morning, stopping only to have a little bite to eat and to do this thing that these books were talking about called meditation, which I instantly knew how to do. And everything that I read in these books, it was like, oh yeah, that's true, that's true, that's true, which I had always had this strange kind of knowledge and wisdom about myself, because for a long time I wasn't really scholastic. I, dropped out of school, second year of high school, wind up getting my GED and getting, a semester of college just to show myself I could do it if I wanted to. Became a straight A student in that, but then discovered I'm not going to work for anybody. I'm being an entrepreneur, so I don't really need to do that. And so I let it go. But anyway, I just had this knowing. That's true, that's true, that's true, that's true. So it wasn't a questioning of the things that I was reading. It was just very matter of fact to me. So it was not like discovering something for the first time. It was like remembering something that I've always known. And so from there, I stepped onto my spiritual path and gave myself to the light into this path. My heart became full of love. In fact, it's probably good. I'll share with you the poem I wrote for that woman that I fell in love. I called her Mellow Mama. That was my nickname for her. So this poem I called Mellow Mama, and I said, once upon a time, I was very, very selfish, foolishly selfish with the gift of love. And then one day I met a little mellow mama who came to claim my love. She gave me all the love for which most people yearn, and I tried not to give love in return. Then one day it seemed that she was going away. I don't mean just somewhere here on earth, but away for a permanent stay. On that day, how to give love, I did learn for the continuation of her heart, for the continuation of her presence, that is, my heart did ceaselessly burn. On that day, I did realize Mellow Mama meant the world to me, and to think she had to almost leave here just for me to see. Through all of our relations, experiences, and endeavors, I was taught the lessons of love through pain, joy, and pleasure. Now I've learned how to truly love, and I did not know at first, for now not only do I love this little mellow mama, but I also love the whole universe. Thank you, Mellow Mama, for showing me the way to universal love, a love so deep, a love so high, a love from within and above, a love so powerful, a love so true, a love I learned through Mellow, Mellow You. So she was a great catalyst for me, because it was through falling in love with her, that things started to slow down enough for me to open my heart to the frequency of the light. And what's so beautiful when I look back at the times of treachery and all of that craziness, I mean, my heart is tender around anybody that I may have hurt. And at the same time, I just have absolute allowing and forgiving for myself, for the craziness. I'm grateful that it didn't last long. It was just from age 16 to 22. I call it my 6 years of insanity. And then the light came on. And so, I'm so honored to have been redeemed, to have come from that to this amazing being, Astarius Miraculii, that I am now. And with that being said, I also offer that kind of belief in every being. I believe that every being can be redeemed. And I think that it's important that we believe in each other in that way, because so often we don't believe that someone can be better. And then we become an accessory to their lack of betterment by offering our belief toward the diminishment of who they are rather than the expansion into something greater. So I believe in the redemption of every being, and I encourage that we all believe that way, and that as a society we evolve and we grow and learn how to walk each other home together and make things better. Well, the didgeridoo came first. The didgeridoo came in 1995. And I had been playing a little bit of the drums, some congas and djembes, not real extensively. I never gave myself quite to the same extent to drums as I did to the didgeridoo. But I remember I was at a drum circle, and didgeridoo players were there, and so it was drums and didgeridoos. And then all of a sudden somebody said, okay, all the drums be quiet, and just didgeridoos. And so 6 didgeridoos were going off at one time. So that was my first experience of a live didgeridoo, is hearing 6. So I think God wanted me to really get the message. And so I decided I'm going to buy one of those. And I found a man that was a great maker, and I looked at some of his instruments, and I said, I'm going to get back with you in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to buy one of those. So in the course of that 2 weeks, I'm working a whole life expo in Santa Fe, which is where I was living at the time. And I was doing Reiki as well as psychic astrology readings. And that's my oldest modality, psychic astrology, that I became professional in way back in 1981. Anyway, this man in the booth immediately across from me was an Aboriginal man by the name of Ashdargan, in fact, and he was doing didgeridoo healings. And I said, oh, I knew I was going to buy one of those, and now I know what I'm going to do with it. So every step of the way, I was being shown. I played the didgeridoo for about 1 year when I had this mystical experience. I was at a friend's house that keeps bees, and I was with my beloved, and we went out by the beehives. The bees were coming and going and coming from the hive. I stood behind her, and I was playing the didgeridoo into her back. And Spirit called my name from the inside, says, Astarius. I said, yes. Now, you know, it's not always that clear with Spirit, but this is one of those 2x4 over the head moments of clarity. And so I answer, but I'm still playing on her. And Spirit says, you're from the clan of the trumpet angels. And a light went off in every cell of my being. And I had this instantaneous understanding of why I'd had such a profound experience with the didgeridoo at that time, playing for just a year. I was excited about telling her what I'd gotten. Didn't stop playing on her right away. But when I did stop, before I could tell her what I'd gotten, she looked at me and she says, oh my God, I just seen the biggest angel Deva I've ever seen. So God gave me the message in two different ways. Let me clairaudiently hear, I'm from the clan of the trumpet angels, and clairvoyantly showed her the angel. So all of the things that I do with sacred sound is by virtue of my clan. And the clan of the trumpet angels are a clan of angels who are the keepers of all the sacred sounds, you know, all of the instruments. They taught me that prior to the didgeridoo being passed to the tribal aborigines of Australia, you know, prior to any material expression of the didgeridoo, the clan of the trumpet angels are the keeper of that. But all instruments. They taught me that didgeridoo is not that tube that the sound comes through. Didgeridoo is the sound itself that's coming through, and that instrument is its body. If one is playing the harp, harp is not that thing that they pluck on. You know, harp is the sound frequency coming from it, and that what's being plucked upon is its body. Same thing with drum and, you know, piano, flute, whatever, because all these sounds are celestial sounds in the higher realm before physicality, before there was a physical need of material instrumentation to produce those sounds. So this is who I've learned from. I played the didgeridoo for 1.5 or so years before the vocal harmonics came in. Then I decided, okay, I want to do vocal harmonics as masterfully as I play the didgeridoo. At that time, it was a really tall order because I went so far and fast with the didgeridoo. But then, you know, now I do them equally. So with the vocal harmonics, like, that's producing simultaneous highs and lows with one voice. The highs represent heaven and the lows represent earth. So it's then creating a marriage of heaven and earth in the cells of the body. Now, sound is the primordial first cause. You know, as in the scripture, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. Well, the Word is also resonant with sound. You know, sound is the frequency by which all things have found their way into being. You see, and so sound is so powerful in that it has a foot in both dimensions simultaneously. It has a foot in the realm of spirit. You can't grab a handful of it and say, I got a handful of this sound. See, so it's definitely of spirit, and it also has a foot in the physical realm because you can hear it with a physical ear. So it is a liaison between the physical and the non-physical. You know, when I produce sound, it's carrier waves of consciousness that trigger a remembering of that which we've forgotten about, the absoluteness of our selfhood. See, we came into this physical experience, and we are that part of God that chose to take on the experiment of coming into the flesh and even tasting of forgetfulness. We even knew when we were on those higher planes, getting ready to come into physicality, we're probably going to forget who we are. We knew it. But in the infinite wisdom of our universal divinity, we left the greater expanse of who we are, standing in the circle of eternity, remembering for us what we were probably going to forget when we entered into some of the nightmare of the earth dream. And so we have this greater consciousness and this greater expanse of selfhood that does not join us in our forgetfulness. And yet, when we wake up and remember, then that greater expanse of who we are becomes more expanded and more glorified. So that's the gift that we give to Source, to God, Goddess Absolute, the gift of the empowerment of championing through the physical experience. And so God is even more glorified when we wake up and remember. And also we give the gift of being our own version of creator, our own version of the universe. See, I think God, Goddess has a huge appetite to experience his, herself in multitudinous ways, through multitudinous beings. Even though it's many facets of one great being, each facet is a version of that divinity, which is as individual as a fingerprint or a snowflake. And so we give that gift to God. Just by being whoever it is that we are, God gets to experience yet another version of his, herself. And we get to wake up and remember, you see. And then, we appreciate our divinity even that much more when we have to muddle, through the trenches of physicality to re-earn the connection to our divinity by virtue of our remembering. And sound is a frequency that helps us to remember. So the astrology came in an interesting way. I have a book called Feast of the Zodiac, Wisdom of Astrology, which originally I published way back in 1980. And my first journey with astrology was with the intention just to learn enough about each sign to write a poem on each sign. I didn't intend to become an astrologer. I started in October of 1979, writing the 12 poems. I spent 2 weeks on each sign, and I would let myself literally embody that sign and be that sign for 2 weeks. And I would read everything that I could read and research everything that I could research about that sign, and then I would accumulate keywords. I had a positive list and a negative list of keywords. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I would glean from my keywords and formulate the stanzas. And that's how the book, came about. Actually, it started as 12 posters before it actually became a book. And then before I could finish, because it was a 6-month project with 12 signs, 2 weeks per, so I finished in March of 1980. But before I could complete, I was catapulted into a full-scale study of astrology. And I think by the time I completed the 12, signs, I did my first professional astrology reading. And so that's how it started. But again, it was like God knowing where I was going. I didn't humanly fully know. So this journey with astrology has been an amazing journey for me. I'm a humanistic astrologer, and I don't approach it fatalistically. Many astrologers and readers, psychic readers, will approach things in such a way that they give fatalistic predictions and never share with a person about their capacity to transcend that negative or horrible possibility. My role is empowering people. And I recognize that astrology is a reflection or a way in which we can study the process of sowing and reaping, you see. And so, it's a reflection of the cause and effect of our lives. The grace and mercy of God, however, is a law above and beyond cause and effect. So no matter what we see, we can always transcend. So I use astrology as a map. We can discover facets of the personality, what one is brought into this lifetime. We can discover, probabilities of circumstances that will be happening for them. But wherever we see, character traits that are not wholesome for them, or possible circumstances that wouldn't be present or pleasant, we look for how do we transcend it. See, so my approach is very solution oriented. You know, it's extremely insightful. I've been blessed to be really, really good at what I do. And I think one of the things that helps a lot is the phenomenal love that I feel for people. So when I deliver my information, you know, not only is it delivered efficiently and with a reasonable amount of accuracy, but with a tremendous amount of love. And I think the love is really what makes all of the difference, because then they can really feel the synergy with me. If they can really feel my love, then they can begin to absorb on a personal level some of my frequency. You know, and they can understand some of what I'm saying to them from the premise of how I understand, because they're letting themselves feel a synergy and a oneness with me. Because see, I am their own self by extension. They are my own self by extension. So it becomes a very powerful experience. And even when I look at where there's heaviness or pain, you know, I look beyond that. You know, I look at higher possibilities, you know, rather than seeing them as an affirmation of that low frequency that they're in. You know, I acknowledge, okay, that's a human fact. And then I move beyond that and I begin to see a higher possibility for them. You know, and they can feel that as well. And it's a way of empowering and serving the whole universe, because that which is done unto the drop is also done unto the ocean. And that which is done unto the drop is done unto every other drop, you know, so. And lastly, when I do my readings, I always record and send, you know, or email the recording to the client afterwards, because in the moment of the session, they receive the information subjectively. They are the subject sitting inside of their own experience. When they hear it after the fact, they hear it objectively, you know, witnessing the exchange between us, which is a completely different vantage point of perceiving. So they'll get insights that didn't register in the same way in the moment of the session. So it's really good for them to have that. I even, you know, record, you know, any sound healings that I do also, so that they can, you know, reactivate that frequency. You know, because every time is now, every space is here. Everyone is you, everyone is me, everyone is us. Well, I first and foremost am a sound healer. I am a musician, yes, and I'm a recording artist, but first and foremost, sound healer. You know, always using everything that I do with music and sound from the premise of bringing healing, bringing awakening of consciousness, you know, bringing a person into the experience of birthing themselves into a greater absoluteness of selfhood, you know. So from the very beginning, it's always been with the intention to heal. When I play the didgeridoo, I play it on the body. You know, didgeridoo, when played properly, is played with circular breathing, so there's no gaps in the sound. Even when I take a breath, there's still a stream of air being blown out, and so the sound is continuous. The uninterrupted sound is a reflection of the endless nature of eternity. So it's waking up the eternal connection within that person, and once again, calling them home to their absoluteness. When I do this work, I am way beyond the exclusiveness of this individual, Astarius Miraculii. I am in alignment with the all-inclusiveness of who I am as the universe portaling through the individual, Astarius Miraculii. See, the universe that I am can't fail. The universe that I am is infinitely successful in the healing ways. You see, and the universe that I am, AKA, you know, the God beingness that I am, is tireless and cannot be drained. You know, many healers mention the experience of getting drained. When that happens, it's because they are over-identified with the exclusiveness of their individual being the source of the healing. And of course they get drained because they've splintered off from the all-inclusiveness of who they are. The energy is coming from the all that is through the individual, if there is a real genuine process of healing going on. So that's, you know, what I bring to the table in my healing work. And so, you know, quite often when I finish, I'm even higher than I was when I started. You know, I'm also aware that I'm serving God through this person. See, and if I can remember that at the central core of this being is a resonance of God. And I love my Creator, and I adore serving my Creator. So if I can remember that, I'm going to serve this individual that much better, and I'm also going to be a catalyst for them elevating into a greater alignment with their own godhood, because that's what I'm seeing them as. And at some level, they're picking it up. We're also uniting the telepathic battery cables and initiating the soul jumpstart. I'm jump-starting them with the frequency that I live in, because my exaltation is their exaltation, as theirs is mine, as the whole universe's exaltation is our exaltation. So I make crystal wands, and when I make them, I weave into them the resonance of the multidimensional ascended self, that's beyond all human woes and beyond all human pains. I use both science and spirit when I make these. So I work from the principle of electronics. So you see this antenna here. In electronics, this would be the main coil. Okay, this particular crystal, is a smoky citrine quartz crystal. Okay, this copper tube that, is all the way from here to there. Now, underneath the dressings is a network of wire wraps that link the crystal, and in electronics, that would be called the secondary coil. So the secondary coil is the means by which amplification takes place. So the power of the overall wand matrix is multiplied by the number of turns of wire in the secondary coil. I also make these in a way where I can take the cap off, and the tube is empty all the way through there, except that I put some bird seed, the food of flight, some lavender buds, and some rose petals in there. So it's a frequency of ascension. It's a frequency of love, like the love of self, the love of source, the love of the beloved, the love of friendships, the love of business associates, and on in that way. And the crystal symbolizes spirit. I use leathers and suedes, the skin of animal, our brother and sister in the flesh kingdom. So the leather and suede are symbolic of the physical body, merged with spirit, which is symbolized by the crystal. And down here is this stone down here that I have attached to the copper cap, is called Drayvite, which is in the tourmaline family. It's brown tourmaline, but the actual specific term for it is Drayvite. So anyway, that's the one. These can be used to meditate. You can put them on the different chakras. You can wheel them, move them through the energy field. They're extremely powerful. And I specifically like to use leathers and suede so that when a person owns a wand, gets a wand from me, as they work with it more and more, what happens is through the moisture in their hand, there's a transmission of their DNA into the wand, and so it becomes an extension of their own being, because the perspiration infuses their DNA in it. Which is different than, let's say, wands that are made totally with metal. Not that the DNA can't merge to some extent, but it's a different merging, because the leathers and the suedes are porous. So it's specifically on purpose that I like for that to be the handle of the wand. So that's my story of the crystal wand. We talked about the music. I guess the only other thing is that, the music is just there with the intention to heal and to transform. I also use binaural beats in a lot of my music now. Binaural beats where I embed it, where it's subliminal, and also the title track of my album, Spirit Rap, which has been my top-selling album and my most celebrated track. Many people say it has literally saved their life. So in a lot of my later CDs, what I've done is I've embedded binaural beats along with the invocation Spirit Rap. And binaural beats are basically, in a nutshell, where one tone is in one ear or one, one channel, like one speaker, or if you headphones primarily with the binaural beats. So you got, let's say you got one tone in the right channel and a slightly different tone in the left channel. The relationship between the two of them creates a third tone in the middle. That's the binaural beat. In technical terms, if you had, say, 300 hertz in the right ear and 295 in the left, the difference between the two when you subtract is 5. So you get 5 hertz in the middle. That becomes the binaural beat. So if you were listening with your headphones and you put one headphone on the right ear, you'd hear a distinctly different tone, and then put the other headphone on the left ear, that would be also, once again, a different tone. But when you put both on, the only thing that you can hear is the binaural beat, which is the third tone in the middle. And it's almost like a marriage between the tone in the right and the tone in the left that makes a baby that becomes the binaural beat in the middle.